Today we break away a little bit from our traditional format to bring you a very special conversation we captured while we were on the road. Ray Campbell and Joe Maxson sit down for a conversation as they discuss the history of Oklahoma gardening.
You want to take it back to where I got the call?
Yep.
That Bob Allen wanted a victory garden?
Yep. Yeah, take us from the beginning.
Ray, it's been a long time since we started all this, but we're still in the game, so I guess that's a good thing.
Well, you know, that's why I always say horticulture keeps people young and happy.
Some folks have been interested in the beginning of Oklahoma gardening. In 1975, I was finishing my doctorate, and Bill Taggart, who at that time was the extension dean, called and said Bob Allen, who was director of OETA, called, and he wants a gardening program. He asked me, he said, what do you think? And I was kind of in limbo at the time. I had been on sabbatical. They had not found a place that they wanted me in on the state staff. We were going to have to wait a while on that, so I pretty well knew what I was supposed to say. And I said, well, I think we can probably do it. He said, what? I said, well, what does he want? He said he wants another victory garden. At that time, Victory Garden was probably the premier gardening program in the United States, and everyone watched it. This was a very different situation than it is now, in that everyone was interested in gardening. All kinds of plants, outside plants, hanging plants, pot plants. If you had a plant, you were popular. And gardening come across real strong. And so Bill asked me to go down to OETA Studios and talk to them, and they agreed that we would do a quarter. At that time, and I suppose still, they do the programming by quarter, 3 months at a time. And so a Tuesday after that, I loaded an OSU van up with plants to put the program together. Now, at that time, what we had to work with was a table.
Yeah, you drove down.
Period.
You drove down from Stillwater to OETA Studios in Oklahoma City.
Drove down to the studio every week and hauled down what I was going to use, decorated the set, set up the program that I was going to shoot that day, and then when we finished, loaded it back up, took it back to the OSU greenhouses, and unloaded it. And
basically, it was like a tabletop.
It was. That's all it was. There's no way to glorify it.
Yeah.
It was a tabletop.
Yeah.
And so we did several quarters, I believe either 4 or 5 quarters that way, and we changed the format a great deal. We did it from my doing a lecture type show to a demonstration type show to a guest oriented type show, and a few times we went out and shot a show or two out in the community somewhere, but never really settled down because of the inadequacy of the facilities we had.
Yeah.
And then after that 4 or 5 quarters, Mr. Case came in, and very shortly Mr. Case had a small garden spot outside behind the OETA studio.
And along with, because I recall the studio gardens over there too, and because when I was doing the show, we still did a little from the studio garden, and they'd roll this big camera out of the studio on a day that it wasn't raining, and this big old bundlesome camera with big long cords on it, and we were kind of limited because what we could do, because the camera wasn't very maneuverable. But they also had a greenhouse over there. Eventually, they got a really nice greenhouse, or a conservatory. So we were able to do some things inside the greenhouse too, particularly in the wintertime. It turned out really, really well. Yeah. Do you think, Joe? Do you think, you said Bob Allen wanted to do a quarter of it. Do you think they decided to continue it on because it proved to be so popular, that first quarter?
I think that's one thing. The show was reasonably popular, but the demand of the public for that kind of program was just so strong. Everybody wanted to do something and learn more, about plants. And it was a great time for naturalists, a great time for horticulturalists, and all plant enthusiasts were in their prime at that time.
What's some of the early shows that stick out in your mind the most when you were doing it over there?
I'm going to go ahead and tell the story about the watermelon. Ray brought a watermelon to the show, and he was going to talk about how to tell when a watermelon's ripe. So he talked about the curl on the vine, and then he talked about the light spot on the bottom of the melon, and that's a good sign. And they even plugged it and got some red. And the melon was turned toward him instead of the camera, and I kept out of the corner of my mouth saying, "Ray, turn it toward the camera." And he'd say something back to me I couldn't understand. Finally, they turned the camera off, and he said, "It's green." So we had that one, and then we had Barbara Brown did an excellent job on cooking as spring vegetables came in. She did several shows like that. We had some good shows on entomology. We had good ones on hanging baskets. We did one on terrariums, as I recall. So we just kind of went with the flow on what was happening outside or in people's garden. And
yeah, Joe, when I think back on Oklahoma gardening, I think about the early years of it and how much fun it was, but yet how it's remained so popular over the years, and primarily because of what you said, people are just hungry for knowledge about plants, and particularly practical ways to grow plants in Oklahoma. But over at OETA at the studio gardens over there, when we do it over there, I recall that they were really on a schedule over there, and you had to be pretty exact in what you did. We didn't do a lot of retakes or a lot of reshoots over there, and because you had 30 minutes to do the show and tape it, because they had other programming if they were doing too. Where at least now we can kind of stop and do some editing and if make a big blooper, start over again. But I recall one time over there when I was going to be demonstrating applying pesticides on some plants, for example, and I had my sprayer there, and I was doing some spraying, and I was being very careful about how to use all the safety precautions, like your gloves, and be sure that you are careful about the way you mix and read the labels and all this. And then I got this spray of stuff mixed up, and my sprayer wouldn't work. And I sat there and I pumped and I pumped and I pumped, and the sprayer wouldn't work. And I didn't have anything to do except try to do that over again. So I just decided what I'd do instead of that is the thought came to mind, I'm just going to show you how to repair a sprayer. So I took that sprayer apart and showed how to repair a sprayer, how to get the gasket in there, and the gasket lubricated and put back in, and then it worked. And so you had to improvise a lot.
Our ingenuity in some cases really paid off for us, didn't it?
Yeah.
And you asked the question a while ago about the popularity of the show. Now, in all honesty, I give Bob Allen the credit for the show's continuation in its early months. Mm-hmm. Bob wanted it so bad, and we faltered for a while. It wasn't the kind of show he wanted. It wasn't the kind of show I wanted. It wasn't the kind of show OSU wanted. But we kept working through it until we had something, and hey, it worked. Yeah. And once the studio and OSU began to see that, hey, it's going to work, with hosts like yourself and a couple of others that let's say brought out the best in the show, they began to put the money into the facilities and the equipment that it takes to broadcast a show like Oklahoma Gardening is.
I think one of the better things too that I have enjoyed about it is how I've seen that show progress over the years. We started out, like you said, taking plants over in the van or the back of a station wagon or something
to the top of a table.
And then a small garden at the studios, and then eventually OSU had the facilities and the capabilities, and their agricultural communications department to start taping the show themselves, and so we were able then to do a much better show by moving the actual filming of it back into Stillwater. And I know we did it in my house for a while, in my garden. We did a lot of location gardening still. And then eventually we finally got the studio gardens where we are now. That's sort of the focal point of the OSU Botanic Garden. And it's just been amazing to see it progress over the years and see the way, I think, the way each host has brought their own uniqueness to the show, their own personality, their own uniqueness, and I think each time a new host comes in, the show just continues to build on itself from the past.
Yeah, and added to that is the volunteer help.
Oh yeah,
people around.
You and I didn't. You and I were on volunteers.
I didn't know about volunteers when I started.
Because I remember, because we all, we had one day to tape the show, and that was on Tuesday. Tuesday was tape day for the show, and your whole life had to center around that Tuesday. Everything had to circulate around that Tuesday, and usually my Sundays and Mondays would be spent getting ready to do a show on Tuesday.
It's been a good run for OETA. It's been a good run for Oklahoma Gardening, and as the first host,
yeah.
I congratulate you and the following host. I congratulate the studio for their interest in it, and also for OSU for what they put into it, because to some extent, when they first started, it was kind of a wait and see.
Yeah.
How long do we stay with this like it is, or is it going to change, or do we need to?
Mm-hmm.
And luckily for us, the interest of the public stayed with plants for strong for several more years, and still is there.
Yeah.
But not to the point it was back in the mid to late 70s.
Yeah.
But they're to be congratulated for keeping everything going like they have.
Well, and the host, the Kim, the current host, and the former host before her, and Kevin, and the videographer, and Laura, our volunteer coordinator, and all the others involved, have really kept the show updated with the current wants, trends, and desires of the gardeners today. We do a lot of environmental friendly things you and I didn't do back in those days.
We didn't know about them. Didn't know about the environment.
But now there's a lot of that, and that's what people want, and that's what people are interested in, and so it's been a good run over the years.
Well, that ability to change and to drift with the flow has been a kind of a stalwart item with OETA, and it's worked well for them.
Yeah, and when the show first started, I'd never heard of YouTube, and now the shows are on YouTube.
Hey,
can you believe it?
I got news for you. When you first started, there wasn't a YouTube.
I guess so. But it's been a lot of fun, Joe. It's been really good seeing you.
I've enjoyed visiting with you, and I wish you the best.
Okay, thanks.